It's Daybreak on the Rise News, and it's time for the press review. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive and analysis. Well, we'll begin with our sister publication as always, and the immediate suspension of Adamawa resident electoral commissioner by President Muhammadu Buhari is the lead story for the paper this morning. The President also directs the Inspector General of Police to prosecute an embattled officer if found liable. 6. Investigation of DSS NSCDC officials. Falana, Binani is culpable, should be investigated. Insists her acceptance speech confirmed she was party to illegal announcement. Urges NBC, that's Nigerian Broadcasting Commission, to sanction NTA for airing her acceptance speech. President in silent message says 2023 polls so transparent. His party lost ground in many states. Tinubu, Atiku, Obi, Saraki, Gbajabiamila, governors, others, great Muslims. Of course, it's the Muslim Eid today. And above the nameplate, NUPRC, that's the regulator in Nigeria's oil and gas sector. Nigeria's oil reserves fell by 0.22%. Gas pool rose 0.10% in 2022. Says upstream investment declined 74% in 8 years. Establishes energy transition and carbon monetization unit. Emefiele, how Nigeria curbed rice importation. Funded smallholder farmers to boost yields. And that's the front page of actually there's one more story there. Let's take in that black strip. Tinubu replies, Presidential Transition Council submits 13 names to inauguration subcommittees. Now, that's the front page of this day. You can pick a copy to read all of these stories and more.
Right, let's look at the Nigerian Tribune. The Nigerian Tribune. Adamawa poll, Buhari approves suspension of REC. Others probe of security officers. We didn't compromise process. INEC counters Binani. Probe allegation of 2 billion naira bribe. Falana task EFCC and ICPC. Then just by that picture, inauguration, Kiari, Marwa, Ononuga. 11 others make Tinubu's list. And just below the picture itself, Naira redesign, we lost 50 billion naira to egg glut. This is what the poultry farmers are saying. Want FD to mop up 15 to 20 million crates of eggs. Say 25 million jobs under threat in poultry subsector. Then you go above the Nigerian Tribune logo. Shawaimun sighted in Nigeria. Sultan declares today Eid al-Fitr. That's for the Nigerian Tribune.
Well, the lead story for The Punch this morning is the plight of Nigerian students in Sudan as violence escalates in the country. The paper says 1,262 Nigerian students demand evacuation, 330 residents killed. Nigerian students fill forms for airlifting. Uganda, Tanzania rescue nationals. 3,200 injured as outage, food, water scarcity in Khartoum, says the WHO. Well, of course, the picture on the front page of The Punch was the moon sighted in Saudi Arabia as Muslims mark Eid al-Fitr today. Some recurring stories on the front pages this morning, such as Buhari suspending Adamawa REC, other security agents probe, that's also making the front page of The Punch. There's so many more on the front page.
All right, let's look at the Sun, the Daily Sun. The Daily Sun. The Daily Sun. Why Buhari is after me. This is coming from the governor of Benue State, Autumn. He says the president against me over anti-grazing law. Below that picture of Sanwo-Olu and the CEO of UBA. I am a projection. Economy starts Tinubu on speedy economic growth. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky invites President-elect Tinubu Jonathan jubilation as Nigeria begins direct flight to Israel. And just beside the logos of Daily Sun, FG concessions on a port for 30 years. Elections outcome in line with my pledge, legacy of free, fair polls. That is coming from the president. And then Salah, Tinubu, Obi, Saraki, Carlo, Guayin, and the rest. Preach peace, unity, rule of law. IGP orders tight security on praying grounds.
The Guardian is focusing on a rather interesting story as its lead story this morning. Despite express centers, corruption, racketeering hobble passport application process, and Adamawa poll, INEC denies partisanship as Falana urges NBC to sanction NTA. India, Nigeria top in children lacking single routine vaccination. A very troubling report indeed.
All right, let's go to the foreign papers. The Independent, just there in that picture, gone in 239 seconds. Elon Musk's Starship, the world's biggest rocket, blows up 4 minutes after lift up. Then Raab's future on a knife edge as PM mauls over Boli farm. Sunak won't be rushed despite promise of swift response on report insider describes as devastating.
Well, the conclusion of a report into bullying allegations against Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary Dominic Raab dominates several front pages this morning. The Daily Telegraph reports that Mr. Raab will fight to death to keep his cabinet job. That's the Daily Telegraph. And there's also a picture making the round on the front pages this morning. Elon Musk's Starship space trip. He describes it as successful.
I newspaper, the I newspaper, still on Raab. He is adamant, says, I will not resign. Fix inflation now, public tells Sunak. That's for the I.
And the Financial Times reports that U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is warning that decoupling from China would be disastrous for both countries, that's the U.S. and China. She's calling for a constructive and fair economic relationship between the two countries.
Right, let's bring in Emmanuel Bello. Today is TGIF on this Friday on Salah Day. By the way, happy Salah, Barakah Salah, that's how they say it. All right, glad to have you join us. This day, Buhari orders immediate suspension of Adamawa resident electoral commissioner. And then just below that story, President in Salah message says 2023 poll so transparent, his party lost ground in many states. And then just in the black stripe down, Tinubu replies, Presidential Transition Council submits 13 names to inauguration subcommittees. What are your thoughts on those three stories, or the one you can take, Emmanuel?
Yeah, well, the big story, and I think it's in 2-3 other papers, that Buhari ordering the immediate, suspension of Adamawa rec. It's the aftermath of that drama that played out the whole of last week, heading into the weekends, and of course, most of this week, and that is the crisis of the election, the announcement, and everything. So this is Buhari, also self-righteous, acting, saying that he's going to act tough on this situation. People will say that it is his party, the APC, that has perpetrated this, and that some of this emanated from his body language. The fact that he sounded as if from the start, when he said, look, if you have lost election, you go to court. It might be the right thing to say, but people saw that as almost what, fueled the kind of encouragement and supported most of these politicians, and including INEC itself. So Fintri was saying much of that yesterday. He said APC was actually using federal might to win elections and to displace people, and that there was collusion between INEC. He also had, top votes for the judiciary. So, yes, the president is right in calling for the suspension of the Adamawa rec. But, this pretty much sum all the other kind of elections that happen across the land. Most of the other elections were almost like what this rec did. The only thing is that, they were not announced by the rec, but the returning officer. But he is also using the Salah message to talk about these elections. The elections are not as transparent or as wonderful as he's trying to make it look. And he's saying that one of the evidence of the fact that these elections were transparent was that the APC, the ruling party, lost in many states. They lost because, the people stood their ground, and of course, goodwill prevailed. Even in the case of Adama, I'm sure it was because of the role of everyone, including the media, in drawing attention to it, and then that swift intervention from INEC that saved the situation, or else we will have seen this same president maybe shaking hands with Bidani and congratulating her and giving her a certificate, she getting a certificate of return. That was almost going to happen until everyone, across the country shouted and stopped it. And some people say it's probably also because it's a staggered election, one that is isolated from the rest. Those kind of elections are better monitored. So, well, yeah, the president is here, self-righteous, condemning what's happening. He should be condemning it. But then the Adamawa story was replicated in many other places in a different way or altogether. I think it's a teaching moment for him as the commander-in-chief and the president, but of course he's going out. And now he's talking about his legacy, especially the one that he said he will bequeath, which is the fact that we're going to have transparent election. Some people say that of all the things you accuse the president of, especially his records, this is the worst. I mean, he was not able to give us the kind of elections where people are still grieving. Matters have gone to court now. The other day, there was a story of how the judiciary is going to have tons and tons of cases on his hand emanating from this election. Even the presidency is not spared.
Well, and one wonders to what extent the president could have acted, to prevent all of this. But Emmanuel Bello, let's turn our attention to the front page of the Punch. The paper is focusing on the plight of Nigerian students in Sudan. Escalation of violence there. Several truces have failed, and it's actually saying 1,262 Nigerian students demand evacuation, putting a number to the Nigerians who want to come back home. I'm talking about students. What do you make of this?
No, I just pray that we act fast and get our students out of the place. The number is staggering there, 100 and over 1,000 numbers. So it's normally Nigerians are always, or civilians are always caught in this mix in the Sudan conflict. This is bringing that conflict home to us at this one. And we want to see how the Nigerian government acts swiftly to save lives. I think you can give this government a little bit of a pass mark when it comes to swift evacuation of Nigeria out of trouble zone. We saw what happened with the Ukraine situation. But so this is another day in the works for the presidency for the federal government to see how it acts fast in leadership and bring back our stranded citizens in a war-torn country.
All right, let's look at The Guardian. The Guardian says, despite express centers, corruption, racketeering, hobble passport application process, and then on that front page too, you see Adamawa poll INEC denying partisanship as Falana urges NBC to sanction NTA.
This whole NTA sanctioning, I'm looking at it from various angles. I don't know what you think, but well, yes, everyone was, incensed that NTA could have actually covered that declaration, that fraudulent declaration. But NTA, I spoke to some people in the NTA. They said, well, they were just covering a story that was developing and was happening. So, I mean, everyone could have covered the story. So that's what they are saying. But I think what everyone of goodwill is saying is that giving her those moments, Binani, the lady that made that declaration, that is giving her that airtime that has indicted the NTA. In another story, they're also indicting Binani herself, who is now claiming that, look, well, she's clean. She didn't do any of these things. She only made her declarations because INEC asked her to announced her as the winner. But people are still saying that, look, she was culpable in that. Falana is very strong about that, saying that she ought to also answer some questions around the issue of her making declaration even when she knew it was false. But she's saying she doesn't know. And NTA too is claiming that, look, we only cover the story, routine job that we all do here which is to cover stories. We didn't know. But people are saying that, look, it is those kind of collusion, where the media gives its space to those kind of things that makes our job a bit dicey, and sometimes we are blamed for But the NBC has been doing a lot, and I think they are going to wade into this. INEC itself is saying, look, our hands are clean. We are not involved in this whole thing. But I believe strongly that the biggest indictment here is for the INEC, but that it's sitting down in Abuja here and like you said the other day, Indy, that, well, it's a case of bad egg in the fold. But a lot of things happened to INEC in this last election. Many people questioning its first its impartiality, questioning even its capacity and questioning the kind of leadership it has provided. INEC needs to look really, really inwards to see what's going on. And the Guardian newspaper has been, back to back looking at sectors, and now it's focusing on this passport issue, but it's done many stories of this nature in the past, whether it is the stadium, the rot in the stadium, or the rot in the aviation sector. It's been doing that, and in a way setting agenda for Tinubu as we wait for the inauguration day.
Well, let's hope that, the NBC is not practicing double standard, Emmanuel Bello, because some would say perhaps if that was a private station and not the government or the state-owned television network, the big stake would have come down on such a channel or a network. If they had done same. As you know, the REC announced, declared a winner before the entire process was conducted. We're still about 10 local governments to be announced. Binani herself was aware, very aware, that the process was not concluded, and she went ahead to give an acceptance speech and a victory parade. So we'll wait to see what NBC does.
That's right, yeah.
And everybody involved. Now the president has waded into the matter. I wonder if you had something to say about Elon Musk's launch to space, the spaceship.
Yeah, well, yes, it's a it's a rich man's paradise and a rich man's world that you are going to blow up $3 billion in mid-air, and you say it was a successful launch after all. But again, the explanation around that is that even at that level, the testing went well, and it helps them to make further changes so that they can, maybe some months down the line, they can have. But then this is one of the most expensive rocket launches, and it blew off, and then they say it's successful. $3 billion gone in the air. This one, I'm just wondering what everyone can do with $3 billion, just going in media and blow it up. But then it's Musk, and he's saying that for him it's successful. Just tells you that there are people around the world that money means nothing to. They just want to have the kick of getting something done of that nature, almost like a video game, sending rockets in midair and blowing it, and then saying that it was a successful thing. Most of us out here can't even begin to understand that. But for those who did that, for Musk and his team, they say it was a successful operation.
Interplanetary travel, Emmanuel.
Who wants to go anywhere? I think that's the future of travel for the people that want to do that. But for the rest of us, we wonder why anybody is wondering about interplanetary travels. Things you watch in science fiction really coming to real life. You and I would be worried about how to even get to our villages.
Perhaps India will go first and come back to tell us how the trip was.
Well, thank God.
Yeah, he has a different kind of interplanetary trip ahead of him.
Elon Musk
with a rapture, I
his
think.
rocket. All right. Thank you so much, Emmanuel Bello. That's the press preview. Let's hear your view on all the burning issues. Follow us on Twitter at Arise TV.